You know, it's almost like your birthday with a package from China, so let's go. With cheap game boxes, you need to take consideration that some of them will have a less overall performance with some platforms. That is something that we need to live with if you're going to be deep diving into the cheap solutions. But I did find a couple of them were quite interesting when it comes to price, emulation performance, but also the way how they are looking and how overall quality they are. Most of them will come with those PlayStation 2 wireless non-rumble controllers, that's one thing to be sure. But when you're looking into it, there are a couple of them are quite interesting. I try to keep them under $50. Yep, most of them will be under $50, but they are bought or purchased through a sale, because that is one of the biggest differences with AliExpress. If you're going to be looking at them now, maybe they're like $90, some crazy amounts, but some random sale pops up and they're like half the price or even cheaper. So that's something you need to take consideration when it comes to prices. That's one of the reasons why I don't mention prices that much. Super Console X has also released this model called the X2 Pro. And yeah, they're coming with the same wireless PlayStation 2 non-rumble controllers. However, this is an interesting one because it doesn't cost a lot of money. However, you don't need to confuse this because there is also a normal X2. But you need to get the X2 Pro, where there's actually not a lot of difference, but still, hey, the Pro version is a little bit better left and right. Like many of these devices, they come with a lot of limitations. However, if you're going to be focusing what you can play, it's a lot. From the old school Atari, Commodore 64, the 8-bit, 16-bit, this thing plays a lot. A lot of arcade stuff, Amiga, you name it, it has a lot of possibilities. Where the N64 part, PlayStation Portable and the many problems we have seen before with cheaper game boxes will continue on these cheaper ones. I think that is one of those concessions we also need to make with the X2 Pro. But when you're looking at the list, there is a crazy amount of different stuff that we can actually play with this. The X2 Pro comes also with a new version of EmuElec, meaning that we do have new emulators and new kinds of cool stuff implemented to this, including some Sega Saturn, where the overall performance will be a mixed thing. However, it is on there, and that's kind of cool that they also implemented this. In here we're having the system settings and a lot of tweaking that you can do, but I also discussed this with the main review because there is a lot of different stuff you can just tweak. If you have problems, you can just fix it. That is crazy that this box is getting cheaper and cheaper nowadays, but you can just play thousands of different retro games. For example, arcade, we do have a lot of different games that run great. However, some games like Killer Instinct will not run. So I think this is just a great box if you just want to play some really old school stuff, 8-bit, 16-bit, let's say all the way up to PlayStation 1, we can actually do that. However, if you want to get into N64, then we will find some games will not run perfectly. It's quite unfortunate, but that is what it is. So next up, let's try a little bit of GoldenEye. And yeah, this is a game and also a system that doesn't run great on these boxes. You can see like we do have like a shitload of glitches, maybe we can fix it. So for once, I must say that it seems to be that they didn't mess it up with the controller like the previous time. With the overall performance, we have some minor hiccups. You can mess around with the emulator if you want to get some better performance. The same thing that I've shown you before with MAME. But again, like I would not expect to have like way better performance in general when it comes to this. Maybe less glitching, maybe most of the time we have less performance and less FPS. Alright, so next up let's try a little bit of a Thomas Wave, a system that will have sometimes little hiccups here and there. But with the box of this, even despite the power that it has, we do have the option to play a couple of these games. Let's get into the hard part, let's see how it emulates, how it keeps up. With the cheap S905 box we always have problems, but with the S905, like the better boxes, we do have like way better performance, what you can see over here. Do have like some minor dips, but nothing like really to worry about. Okay, so next up let's try some Sega Dreamcast gaming, and I must say when you're looking at the FPS you can see it dipping to 40 sometimes, but in my opinion it doesn't really bother me. Now you can see the numbers, then you will notice it, but when you're actually playing it, I don't really notice it at all. But it will like a great indication that the system combination with the Flycast emulator is not a great fit on this chipset. But again, most of the Dreamcast game will be playable. So I just wanted to check it out in the main menu, not even starting the game. You can see this thing runs around like 30 frames. It's absolutely unplayable. And this is something we will notice when it comes to these devices and PlayStation Portable. So we just need to have way more power to run this. So PlayStation Portable, they should like remove it at all because it's pointless. Many devices like the Panasonic 3DO and PlayStation Portable has a lot of struggles on these cheaper game boxes. But I don't want to focus too much on the negative today. Actually, when you're looking at these, let's say, game boxes, there are so many crazy amount of games you can play. And where do you think these things are getting cheaper and cheaper throughout the years, and it's getting even more interesting to actually take a close look at it. Even beside all of the problems these things have, now they're getting really interesting. So the X2 Pro does have a lot of positive things to it when it comes to the case design, but also when it comes to the overall emulation performance where we can play. So particular one is the Cube version. We have the first edition, I think the most common one will the X3. And the X3 chip, I just love this thing, because where you cannot play everything like Wii, GameCube, PlayStation 2, but this is just perfect if you don't really care about those platforms. If you just want to get into the old school stuff, think about the 8-bit and 16-bit era, having different kind of handhelds. Also here we do have limitations, so one of the more familiar ones is even having like 1,000 of arcade games or Neo Geo games you can boot up and play. So when it comes to MAME and arcade, there we don't have the option to actually play Tekken or some more advanced games. But where I always like speak about limitations, we can still play a lot of cool stuff. Where I love these, let's say, basic boxes for 8-bit, 6-bit, PlayStation 1, you name it, you can just actually play them just fine. And the later systems where we do have upscaling options, or we're going to be deep diving in later on in this video, we don't have all of these options because these devices are not powerful enough. But for plug and play cheap solutions, yeah, this is just great when it comes to that. So N64 will always be a mixed bag with these low-end stuff, and in combination with EmuElec 3.9, I think the emulation is just what it is. But some games are just playable, beside all the glitches and slowdowns. Just perfect. Music is great. But what I noticed, like this control I'm using now works way better. Let's take a close look into a golden oldie. Yeah, this Super Console X where all of the craziness started. But when you're going to be looking, and this is important, if you're going to be waiting and looking into sales. I noticed this older model getting in sales for like $35 sometimes. Depends where you're living, because I did notice people saying like, depending where you're living, sometimes the discounts can be different. But I noticed if you're getting a Super Console X, where this is absolutely not the best version, don't get me wrong. Some time ago, I noticed this thing with S905 chip still in it, still the old configuration or old stock, but they were having this for super sales like $39. And that is kind of cool, because the older EmuElec they're using on this, it's not the best one. We're still missing out many platforms like Sega Saturn, and maybe we have like an overall okay performance with some newer systems, all the way up to PlayStation 1. We have some overall great performance on native resolution. And if you can grab this thing for, let's say, $30 or $39, it's going to be crazy. I think that would be an amazing deal, and that's the reason why I added this to the list of, let's say, best budget emulator. And that's a simple reason, because this is just a very cool emulator to play all of those old school retro games. So the only downside of this model was that it didn't have like any active cooling. So if this thing will survive in the future is of course a debatable situation. Later on they released the same kind of handheld, only in a different configuration with a nice case, a different color, and also with a bigger storage capacity of 256 GB. So the internals were exactly the same, and the same chemical PlayStation 2 fake wireless controllers with no rumble function whatsoever. With the same kind of case, only in different colors. I don't know if they keep selling this because this was like weird, like X Pro model they call it, but in the end, when you're looking at the bottom part, it's exactly the same. There was no active ventilation. I still find it very strange all the way to today that we're having, let's say, the exhaust is actually at the bottom. Makes no sense. And also when it comes to the software, is exactly the same. And sometimes I did notice with those cheaper ones, you have like a newer version, but like the S905 is not capable of running higher than PlayStation 1, or at least decent enough to enjoy. Think about N64, Dreamcast, there was no Sega Saturn at all, and the PlayStation Portable runs really choppy with most games. But again, this is a very cool, cheap way. If you can pick one of these things up for not a lot of money, I think we have still thousands of different games that you can actually play and enjoy yourself with.